Another episode here of Getting There with Goz. An exciting episode as always, and a different episode because it's our first teammate episode. We've got two teammates joining us, and you never stop being teammates, by the way. Coach Steve Dagostino, Coach Josh Pelletier. I'm going to do my respectful coach because anybody who ever coaches, I go by coach. You've earned that title. But for the sake of lack of confusion, it's going to be Josh and Dags during the interview. So let's start with this. Before we talk about your time at the College of St. Rose and what you guys have done post, I'm going to start with you, Josh. Take us to a young Josh Pelletier, 6, 7 years old. What did you want to be as a kid, your first job? And was it that same dream job when you were 18?
No, I don't think it was the same dream job. I think like a lot of kids who were into sports, I wanted to play in the NBA or play in the NFL. Got to high school and I was a pretty good player. Got to college, it was okay. But, very early on there, probably in high school or college, I realized that wasn't going to be the life plan. But basketball, and especially like the business of basketball, I say is like a culture. The whole thing is like a culture, the way we act, the way we talk, the way we dress, things like that. Guys like, well, I call him Steve because I knew him before he was Dags, but guys like Dags and I'll say Dags, just like to be in the gym and, coaching basketball, which I ended up doing now, is probably the next best thing. I get the competitive aspect of it and I get to give back to, like I was lucky. My father was a coach. I played for Brian Fruscio in high school, Jimmy Hart with the City Rocks, to Brian Bury with St. Rose. I mean, you're talking like Albany legends to Will Brown and Don Bassett at UAlbany. Just to be able to do even half of what some of those men have done for me is kind of how I got to where I am and where I hope to keep going, if that makes sense.
It does. Dags, that same question to you. A young Dags, 6, 7 years old. What did you want to be as a kid? And was it that same dream when you were 18?
Yeah, I think Josh hit it on the head, right? Like if you're a young basketball player, you want to be in the NBA and you work towards that goal. And what's cool about, now in 2021 is like you can fall short of that initial goal of playing in the NBA. But like Josh said, the business of basketball, I mean, you could be anything from an NBA star to, a broadcaster to an agent to a front office stat nerd, So I think any of us who had that dream when we were younger to be in the sports world playing and somehow find another path to stay in it, like I've done with training is, that's always been the goal. Like, thank God I went to St. Rose for accounting and like, thank God I'm not an accountant, I get to be in the gym every day. So yeah, it's so I think both of us have taken the long route, but we've kind of found our niche in the basketball world.
Let's talk about the opportunity you both had to play college basketball. I want to stress that, especially for young people listening, it is truly an opportunity. It is a privilege to play at the next level. And if someone's fortunate enough to be recruited by a college, that is truly a gift to have that happen. Dags, I want to start with you because I've heard the rumors that you were a little smaller at Guilderland. It was much more of a challenge to be recruited for you. So let's start with you and your recruiting journey, how you ended up at the College of St. Rose.
So my recruiting journey was wild. So I was 5'6", 120 pounds as a sophomore in high school, and I was on the varsity team. And so I was always smaller, but I made a goal. And when I was in like 9th grade, I'm like, I'm just going to work every day at this thing. And then wherever I end up, that's great. I'm lucky that my dad was a coach similar to Josh's. And he was like very level headed about everything. Like he wasn't stuck on like the Division I, Division II, Division III. He was more so like, have the best high school career that you can have. And then wherever everything plays out, it plays out. And so, by the time I was a junior, senior, I was like 5'11", but I was still only like 135 pounds. So even looking back on it now, I had some Division I interest, but like, no Division I coach is giving a 5'11", 135 pound kid a scholarship. Like it just, no matter how good you are, unless you're like flying around and dunking, it's not going to happen. But, my father sent out my recruiting tape because it used to be like a VHS tape to literally every Division I. Heard back from Binghamton who said, they basically were like, we recruit Atlantic 10 type players who don't make that level. And, we don't think that you're that. Sent it out to every Division II school. Only one replied, St. Rose. They ended up, offering me a scholarship. And, I went to a league where literally 15 coaches like wouldn't even respond to being the 2-time MVP. So that was, and we beat Binghamton twice when I was at St. Rose. So it kind of comes full circle, but that was basically my recruiting thing. And Josh and I played together on the City Rock. So we've known each other since, what is it, Josh? Like 10th grade, 9th grade, something like that, right?
I remember driving to Detroit, Michigan with you and your parents when we were 16.
Stuffing your brother Andy in the trunk.
Yep. Wouldn't let him out. But and just to throw something in on that, shame on all those coaches who didn't recruit Dags, because he's a little modest sometimes, and he's doing so well with his business now. But God, he was a hell of a player, and to be a 2-time MVP in that league, I don't know how often that's happened. Steve, maybe but like not very often.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 or 4 times, and one of them was the guy who played in the NBA, Mario Ellie, played with the Spurs forever. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, just that's how crazy recruiting is too. Yeah. You either get labeled as, oh, he's a Division II or he's a Division III, and you see it all the time. You'll see guys playing for Baylor in the national championship game that had one offer and went to a smaller school and worked their way up. But I mean, Steve was one of the, even who I never knew he would get into something like this, but even in college, he was ahead of the curve with his work ethic, and more ready for college than someone like myself. I think I figured things out a little bit later in my college career, but right from the jump, his work ethic and things like that. It's no surprise that he's at where he is now.
Well, let's talk about your recruiting situation, Josh. I know it's probably unique and different in its own right in comparison to Dags. Take us through your journey, how you ended up at the College of St. Rose.
Maybe a little bit different, but similar. So I had maybe 2 other schools in that league that, quote unquote, would have wanted me. Some Division I interest. My sister played at St. Rose years before me. So I had a relationship with Coach Bury for years. And I'll never forget, Steve committed to St. Rose before I did, maybe like a couple weeks or a month. I can't remember exact couple. And, kind of like text me like, hey, when, you're going to come, you're going to commit. And then I'll never forget, Coach Bury came to an open gym that we had at LaSalle Institute, the high school I went to, in the spring of my senior year of high school. I'd been some Division I's there, and I think I played okay. And, talking about setting up visits, and I just finally said, let's get this done. Because of my trust in Coach Bury's reputation and someone like Dags going there, thought we would have something special, and we really, couldn't have worked out any better.
Yeah, the amazing part about this is you guys already touched on it. You guys have known each other since basically you were kids, since young teenagers. So now you become teammates at the collegiate level. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys were also roommates at one point as well. So I didn't have to
the
ask
whole
about
time. Not 1 point. The whole 4 years.
The whole 4 years. What?
Yeah.
All right. So I was going to ask what your guys' first impression of each other were. So I guess I'll still ask it though. A young version of Josh Pelletier and Steve Dagostino. What were your first impressions of each other as young teenagers?
I just going.
Be careful how you answer that.
just like because we knew each other. Obviously, we were friends and all that. It's a little different now because everybody's so interconnected. So we weren't as connected, through social media. We just knew each other from AAU, and we're obviously friends and stuff. So to go from that to living with anybody is wild. But I think both of us are pretty laid back and normal. So I can't even. 4 years, I'm trying to even think of maybe there were 1 or 2 fights, you know what I'm saying? But nothing like crazy. So for at least on my end, everything was, with having him as a roommate was awesome. And we grew pretty close. And actually funny story. So we had Josh redshirted, so he had an extra year. And so after I graduated, I went over, I was in Iceland and Hungary, and I came back and he was rooming with our manager. So he was with me for 4 years, and then he roomed with our good friend and manager. And so we went out when I got back, and literally an hour into the night, they're ready to kill each other. And I'm like, yo, Josh and I barely fought, and now you guys 1 year, not even a year, and you guys are gonna kill each other. Come on, man.
And just to speak to that a little bit, how crazy rare that is. I'm just speaking from my personal preference, and maybe it's just a reflection of me. I was fortunate enough to play Division III athletics. I had 4 different roommates in 4 years. And I think it's about the competitive nature because, look, and we'll dive into this right now. You guys are competing for playing time and to put up minutes and to put up points. And look, that's a very healthy thing that happens with young athletes. They want to see themselves excel. Obviously, you guys have a relationship pre St. Rose, but there's nothing wrong with being a competitor. There's nothing wrong with going hard. Did that ever creep over off the court to you guys? Because I'm sure when you go back, it's not you just flip off basketball. You guys are probably talking basketball night in and night out when you guys are rooming with each other. I'll let Josh answer that first, and then Dags can go second.
I honestly, I don't think it ever really did, because like Steve was a point guard. There'd be competitive times in practice, but I don't remember a time where there was like a jealousy or anything like that. And Steve. Dags, keep calling.
You call him Steve if you want. It just makes it easy for me. Yeah.
Dags played from the jump. Did you start as a freshman, or
Yeah, I started.
You basically started as a freshman, and for a bunch of reasons, basketball-wise, socially, academically, I redshirted as a freshman, and then was hurt. So I wasn't even playing, as a freshman. And he was like very good player and a contributor on a really good team. But just for whatever, like he said, I think it was just our dynamic and what we had. Sure, like we probably would get competitive in practice, but I don't ever really remember a time. Certainly our arguments, or like you said, our fights, they were never like basketball related. At least once we got back to the room, maybe on the court or something like that.
Maybe like 2 a.m. fights, but not like, and then you don't even remember the next morning, but not like. And the other thing too with Josh, especially because, he redshirted, like he said, his first year, and then his sophomore year, I think it was your second year, like the first 5, 6, 7 games, he was playing a bunch and then got hurt. And I've always, like you want to play with people that you trust and that you're comfortable with. So I always wanted to play with Josh, and I, for whatever reason, timing and injuries, it just never happened. But there were spurts where like we were able to play together and we were really, really good as a team, and he did really, really well. And it just, I remember being in our room when you had 2 ACLs, right?
Yeah.
And just like it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And like, knock on wood that I didn't have anything like that, but you feel bad that, you wait a year and then all of a sudden you're like playing really well, and then you get hurt. And for anybody that plays, like once you get hurt, to try and get that momentum back when you were playing, like you're not going to get that. You waste a year. So I always felt bad with that, because I thought when we were on the court together, we were always like really good. And like Josh said, we very like, I don't even know, like basketball wise, like nothing ever carried, back to our room or back to our apartment or anything like that.
I've spoken to other college athletes before, and always the question I like asking them, that transition between the high school level to the college level, was there the welcome to college basketball moment? But it feels like you two were both prepared for that next level, whether it was that the city rocks or just being competitive. Is that fair to say you guys were both ready, that when you made that transition from the high school to college level, that there was not a wake up, you're here at a new level of basketball? I'll let Degs answer that first, and Josh goes second.
So for me, it was a little different, because I came off the bench my first 2 games as a freshman, and then ended up starting basically every game except for I think one the rest of my career. But I literally, like in the summer leading up, we'd go play pickup with those guys, and I'd sit there and I'd say like, yo, how the heck am I going to play with these guys? Because they're so strong, they're so athletic, and they're so good. And kind of what happened with me, and I think too, like I remember like we'd go out, and there were certain spots and certain people that we would hang with. And even in the preseason, just people that hung around the program were like, yo, like you're the new point guard. Like like this guy, we had a kid, TK, who was like 6'3", strong, like great dude, great leader. And like, yo, like TK is our point guard. Like you're not taking his spot. And I'm like, crap, like I'm probably not. And so kind of like Coach Bury just saw something in me and threw me into the fire and was like, yo, you can handle this, and I trust you. And move the other guard to the 3, and we had a really good 2 at the time. And so I kind of got thrown in the fire, and Coach had so much confidence and trust in me from the beginning that I just kind of had it and I rolled with it, so that kind of helped me, become ready for college basketball.
My experience was a lot different, like we were talking about, just for numerous reasons. But there was a time, so like I said, Steve or Dag said it earlier, and I said I redshirted my freshman, then was playing my redshirt freshman year. I thought I was like, here we go. I played and was playing well in 6 games. We played out at Binghamton. I had a big game and an exhibition game. I get hurt, and so that season's gone. Get hurt the following season. I literally didn't really play in games for 2 seasons after my freshman year when I was playing. And then as a senior, started and played in games and all that. But I guess the point is I think I was ready for college, but anything can happen. And Dags' experience is probably way more unique than a lot of experiences. Most kids do not come in, as you see it everywhere, unless you're talking one and dones at the highest level. And especially on good teams, which we were a good team. Most kids do not come in and play. So I think I was ready for college, but just because of factors, some of them my control and some of them out of my control, it just takes a while, and everybody's path is different. But like I said, I still feel like I had a good career, and I'm thankful that I, made the relationships with the coaches and the teammates. And the fact of the matter is also, like I said, on good teams, freshmen shouldn't play. They they shouldn't. It's 22, 23-year-old men who should play. Like Steve said, he was 5'7", 160, something. I don't know.
5'11", 155. Yeah. Come on, man.
Oh, right. Well, that's what they listen to, Matt. But to come into a good college program at a scholarship level and play right away, it'd be really good. That doesn't happen a lot.
But Josh, you know what, that adversity you're talking about, and it leads to this question about pride. You've gone through these injuries, you've gone through these battles to play and get on the court at a collegiate level, and it is so easy to say, you know what, this is hard. I'm rehabbing, my teammates are having success. I'm either going to not get an opportunity to do this later in my career, or I'm just going to move on and do something else. A lot of people, you look at a freshman class, whatever sport it might be, football, baseball, basketball, you come in with a freshman class, those are likely not the same exact people who are going to walk on senior day. Things happen. People leave the program, whatever reason it may be. Maybe it's, personal, or they just want to do something else. There has to be pride for both of you. And I'm going to start with Josh, that when you look back at your career at St. Rose, maybe for you, the pride is that you got through it. You battled through all that stuff, and you still got to be a part of that team when it mattered the most towards the end of your career.
Yeah, I certainly became frustrated, not playing and basketball being such a big part of your life. But there was really never a thought of mine to ever quit or give up or not do it or do something else. And certainly there's pride there now, because I have these lifelong connections with, like I said, the coaches that I mentioned before, my teammates, a bunch of teammates from St. Rose who I still talk to weekly, if not daily. Dags, and I've had a couple others in my wedding or in their weddings, their wives or friends, things like that. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. It's the wins and loss. We had good teams. I can't remember every game, but I remember moments. I remember big wins. I remember a win at Pace in the conference tournament. That was we were down, Dags could correct me, but 10 with a minute left. I remember a quadruple overtime game against Philly U in the NCAA tournament that we won. You remember the moments and the people, and I still say this to this day in coaching, then in something that's what basketball is. That's what sports are. You remember the moments and the people more than every win and loss. You remember some good wins and you remember some good losses, but that's certainly what I'm proud of.
Dags, how about you? You look back on your career, what do you feel the most proud of when you see a little hindsight of that?
To be honest, just for me, it's always kind of been about, I've always tried to pay back people that believed in me, right? And so whether that's in business, if we don't take investments, but if somebody's investing in my business, I'm paying them back tenfold. And the same thing, Coach Bury believed in me, and my dad believed in me, right? So we always talk about parents, my kid deserves this or that, and I'm sure my dad was listen, my kid deserves a scholarship, but how many parents say that and then their kids don't get one, and then they go to a school that doesn't give scholarship and they stink anyway. So it's no, you're not even close to that. So I feel like I paid back my family for believing in me, right? And saying, however good they thought I was. And same thing with Coach Bury. And, I just think that like this is great, right? Because Josh and I both had different careers where I played all the time. He battled injuries. And like what I think is getting lost in today's game is especially like in college, when you're able to be around people for 2, 3, 4 years, you develop these lifelong connections that outlast your basketball playing days. And I think that gets taken away now with everybody transferring after 1 or 2 years. Like, those relationships aren't real. Like I've lived it on the, when I was playing pro, when I got to like my 3rd or 4th year, the season ends, you've been with the team for 1 year, and all the Americans are like, like we got to stay connected. Like we're going to get together. And the joke is like, it's like never going to happen. Like we may talk to each other like once or twice. And that's what college is becoming. And I'm fine with it if that's what it's going to become. But you miss out on, these lifelong connections. You miss out on what's great about college basketball, to go chase something somewhere else where you don't like look at, like you could get hurt, things happen, but I don't know. That's what I'm most proud of. And, for all of our players that we work with, I don't care if they play 1 second in college. I don't care if they play every day. Like, I just want them to be happy. And sometimes, that happiness doesn't come 2 days after your ACL surgery and you're laying on the floor of Partridge Street, like, dude, how am I going to make it through this? But it comes years later when you realize what you've been through,
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about those things after the College of St. Rose. Josh, I'm going to start with you. How do you get your first coaching job? And for Degs, we're going to talk about your pro career, how that happens. So Josh, we'll start with you. How do you get that first job in the coaching field?
Well, real simple. Coaching, like a lot of things in life, or maybe even more so, is about who you know. Coach Bury, his assistant in the mid to late 90s was Will Brown, the former head coach at UAlbany. So Coach Bury calls up Coach Brown and says, "Hey, Josh Pelletier is interested in getting into college coaching. Do you have anything for him? Can you help him out?" And I had a little bit of a very, small relationship with Coach Brown through working his camp, and we talked. Long story short, it's August after graduating from college, and the opportunity he can provide me is more or less a volunteer spot. But I was able to live almost for free at home, paid for a phone. I got some camp money. I worked some side jobs. I worked at the track, this, that, and the other. But I made it work because I knew that was my dream to coach, and to continue coaching. That was a way to get in, and I'm glad I did that back in 2009 now.
Dags, how did you end up getting paychecks to play basketball?
So I, after my last year at St. Rose, I had been a 2-time All-American. So, naturally I had a couple agents hit me up, but again, like the market isn't huge for, 5'11", 160-pound guys, but my mom was actually born in Italy. So I was able to get my Italian passport. So I have my Italian citizenship, and that helps with, so European leagues, they're only allowed a certain number of Americans. But most of the European leagues will allow there's like set spots for other European players. So I could play in all these countries as a European player. So I had like 5 agents to choose from, chose the wrong one, but I went. So my first year was kind of all over the place. I was in Iceland and Hungary, then got a different agent, finally got to Italy where I wanted to be. And it was just, I didn't play well. I wasn't in a good organization. I could have did better. Ended up, that was the only time I got fired from a job, came home and actually helped out at St. Rose for a couple months. And then, had 2 more years where I played in England and then finally in Spain. So, with my 3rd agent. So I went through a couple agents, had a real solid career over there, was able to make a little bit of money. And then, when I was over there for 10 months out of the year, I'd come back for 2 months and started the training and the camps and things like that. So it was a good segue in what I ultimately wanted to do. But it was also one of those things where, you look back on it now and you're like trying to make the most money you can, when really it's like, those experiences are going to trump, the most of the time, the money that you're going to make.
Yeah, that timeline we're talking about. So you're talking about like Iceland 2010 is when like the first Dags basketball things start getting underway.
So I was in Iceland, and I was actually in Iceland 2008, my first year out, when the whole financial collapse happened, and it happened in Iceland. It started with the Icelandic bank. So I remember waking up and everybody was like freaking out. And a couple days later, they gave us cash for like 2 months' pay, and we're like, get out of here. And they sent all the Americans home. So I ended up going to Hungary. Horrible organization, horrible. And actually, Ronald Moore from Siena is there now with the same team. And somehow the team that I was with folded and they got new management. And now it's like one of the most professional teams in Hungary. But when I was there, literally, I was walking to practice, always late on our monthly checks, like horrible. My wife went there. It's the worst. She'll never go back to Hungary again. You couldn't pay her enough money to go to Hungary. So, but that was 2008 I started. And then that's when I also started my camps and our training business.
Yeah. So hearing all these stories, like, look, it is very easily to get discouraged when your check's not coming in and you're in a different country. And I'm sure for Josh, like, even though he's working for a Division I program, like when you're working at the bottom of the totem pole, there are long nights and a lot of hours. You're just grinding and cutting film and everything else. Josh, I'll start with you. That when you're going through this process, I guess I'll use the term fear, where it's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I exactly in the spot that I really want to do this?
It's so Dags and myself, like I said, are both in the business of basketball, but I think my path is certainly a little more tumultuous, where like when I got into coaching, I didn't have a quote unquote full-time paycheck for 3 years until, you know, I bounced around for a little while. I ended up at a school in Pittsburgh, Duquesne University. And I was like 27 at the time, 26 or 27, where you get your quote unquote first paycheck. You're missing out on a lot of stuff. It's a lot of sacrifices. You know, friends that go to happy hour every Friday or vacations or getaways. Like, you don't do that. You just don't do that. And then fast forward to now, where we got let go at UAlbany last month. And, you know, I'm in my mid 30s now with a wife and 2 kids. And it's, hey, where's this thing going to go? You know, but it's your passion. It is what, you know, it's what I love to do. It's obviously what Dags loves to do. There's nothing else I would want to do. I mean, I think it was March 1st, we got let go. And that would have been the first time in 12 years I didn't have a team to quote unquote coach. Of course, I stay connected with the players there. So what do? I call up Jimmy Hart with the City Rocks, and I'm coaching AAU that weekend, and I'm in the gym for 8 hours for 2 straight days, because that's what I know and that's what I do. And to the normal person, or the, you know, person who doesn't really understand the coaching or the basketball business, like that's freaking crazy. But to, you know, myself and the people closest to me, my wife and my friends and people like Dags, they don't even blink, because like I said, it's a culture of basketball, and that's what we know. So it's great. It's crazy.
It is crazy, but it's this ambition. It's this drive. It's this competitive nature. And Dags, to you, when I moved out here to the Capital Region, I started finding out more and more about your basketball situation and how you're working with younger athletes. I looked around the state of New York and thought, there is no one really like what he's doing. And you built this up from the ground floor. Like, this took a decade plus, but you got to look at what you're doing and saying, you take a leap of faith too, but you bet on yourself basically. And you get to sit here and be like, you know what? I bet on myself, and look where I was able to take myself.
Yeah, I think you always got to bet on yourself, and you just got to keep showing up every day. You know, there's a lot of people that do training, and for us, it started with, you know, one group in 2008, and then segued into, I got the chance to work with Scotia and Shen. Those were my first 2 team training clients, and Coach Gemate and Coach DeZekis, you know, took a chance on me, and you know, they ended up winning state championships like in the next 2 years. And everyone's like, man, like, you must have did on not anything I did. They were just, you know, those are the type of coaches that, you know, allow, like, hey, we need another voice. Let's get another voice in here. So they took another one. They took a leap of faith with me, and that kind of springboarded everything. But I just think that, you know, in a normal, you would assume in like a normal profession, right? Like a 9 to 5, whatever it may be, your trajectory is going to be like this. And in being an assistant coach, for me, is I don't know how they do it. I have no idea. Your whole livelihood depends on the head coach. And then also there's so many young people coming out that there's an oversupply of assistant coaches. You know, and so once you get let go, it's like, hey, I gotta stay in somehow. And like, credit Josh, I've seen so many assistant coaches and been introduced and know a bunch where, dude, these guys don't want to coach. Like, for every Josh Pelletier who you know gets let go, and then all of a sudden they're in the gym a couple weekends later, there's other guys who are doing God knows what because they don't love coaching. They love walking into the arena with 4,000 people on a Friday night and getting that high of like being a coach, right? So
Right.
I think the universe rewards people that just keep showing up and are doing things for the right reason. And that's what I've always tried to do. And I know that's what Josh continues to do. So, you just hope for, for myself that, we keep doing the right things and people, keep seeing the value in what we do. And for Josh that he's able to, find another spot, which I know he will, because again, there's a lot of fakers out there and Josh isn't one of them.
Yes, I'm a big fan of both of you guys, and that's very well said by you there, Dags. I want to get to our final 5 questions, and it's going to be fun because usually we wrap with one person, but I get now double perspectives on these basketball-themed and business-themed questions. I'm going to start with Josh first because this could still happen, by the way, so this is going to be fun with this. Is there a player you wish you coached? I asked Brian Bury, your former coach, both of you guys, a player he wished he coached. How about both of you? Again, Josh, for you, a coach, and then Dags, maybe a player you're still hoping to work with or wish you could have worked with.
For me, there's a lot, but I'll keep it local, and it's somebody everybody knows. I'll say Kevin Herter, because I saw Kevin the first time I ever saw Kevin. It was like September of his junior year at Shen, and I just remember walking in the gym like, oh my gosh. And I'd be lying to you if I thought he'd be, playing in the NBA and playing as well in the NBA as he is now. But I mean, and there's dozens, but he certainly jumps out with skill set, athleticism, length, shooting, IQ. I mean, like Dag's works with him, so he has it all, and he's had it all for a while, and he's going to continue to keep blossoming in the NBA. And see what he's doing now is awesome.
So like for me, I'm going to go a little more broad. Like obviously, like trainers, there's a lot of trainers out there that are really, really good at what they do. But there's a lot of other ones that are trainers because their boy that they grew up with is now in the NBA. So like, on one hand, I want to say, LeBron James. If I was LeBron James trainer, I would, write my check in any place I wanted to be in the world. But even more so, like I had a chance this past year during pre-draft to work with Elijah Hughes from Syracuse and then Nathan Knight, who plays on the Hawks with Kev. And Nate went undrafted. And one of his things was like his shooting. He didn't really shoot threes in college. His senior year, he ended up shooting 30%. And like, he was shooting awesome by the time, it was draft combine. He finished top 10 in the draft combine in a couple different shooting drills. And he had games this year already with Atlanta, like I think like 4 or 5 games where he's had over like 15 points. And so really, like, I guess my answer is going to be like that niche of like undrafted guys or like late second round guys that you can make an impact on. And like, if they just believe in themselves and they can tweak a couple things, they have a shot to sign like a 2-year, $4 million contract. So I think that I keep it broad and go with that.
Yeah, and I like that. My dad, Gaz Sr., big fan of Nathan Knight. Nottingham High School, his alma mater. So shout out to the Bulldogs. Okay. Yeah, so that's his boy. And that sets it up for a nice segue here to this one. Does the Syracuse game haunt you guys? The Carrier Dome? What? Because Degs, especially you, Degs, when you type in your name, it's just constant pictures of you running around the Carrier Dome. Take us through that. Why does that game haunt you?
Dude, horrible. And I'll tell you what makes it haunts me even more. So we were up 1 with like 6 minutes left. We were right there, like a couple more threes and a couple more stops, and we're good. Like we played so good. But what haunts me even more is, okay, you lose by 9, you're up 1 with 5 or 6 minutes left, whatever it is. Like you put out a good effort and you gave yourself a chance to win in the last 5 minutes and you didn't. But the fact that like Lemoyne beat them the following year, horrible, especially because that year with Lemoyne, dude, they didn't even make the NCAA tournament. You would think like, okay, Lemoyne beats them, like they're the best team in the Northeast 10, like not even close. So, and then we never lost. We never lost to Lemoyne once. That was like our rivalry, but they never beat. I think we played them like 12 or 13 times in 4 years. So that on top of already losing, horrible, man, horrible.
Josh, do you want to add anything to that to help Dags' stress maybe come down one day?
He said it all. I was going to jump on the Lemoyne. The Lemoyne did beat them and didn't go to the NCAA tournament that year, which is so crazy. And I think did Syracuse go? They went pretty far that year.
Wasn't that the year they were like the 11 and they went to like the Final Four? Like
it might have
been.
They
went pretty far. Yeah.
Syracuse had a run that year too, because then nobody cared. Everybody said Syracuse is done, and then like always they make a run. And
also, let me say this: my boy Perno, who's the head coach, on our scouting report, it said Dante Green didn't shoot threes. And he was like an NBA 3-and-D guy. I don't even think he killed us that game, but I always remember that.
This isn't on my list here, but aren't you buddies with Eric Diefendorf now? Does Diefendorf, is my timeline correct? He's in that game. I think you guys did some stuff at the Salva Youth Center, maybe back in my area too. My hometown, that Diefendorf was battling with you then. Yeah.
He was a beast, man. So, we connected when he was done playing, and now he's doing some training out in Syracuse, and he does a lot of really good stuff for the community out there. He's a tough boy, but he was in that game for sure.
So you say he's tough, but I feel like it's a different Eric Diefendorf. Like when you guys battled against him, and he was a bad dude, but now he's leveled out. He's got a family. He's a little bit more. Maybe he's nuts again on the court when he's back out there, but he seems a little bit more chilled than a younger version of himself.
It's so funny. So even with me, Josh attest to this, but I hate it. I don't if you're on the other team, I hate everybody. We even had a kid my junior year going into senior year transfer, 6'8" kid. And I tell you, no lie, the day he left, I maybe have talked to him one time since that. My mindset was always no, forget you, So it's funny to see guys like that, like Diefendorf too, and myself. Now I'm cool with everybody. I try to keep it and it's the same thing with him, but you got to transition that. You can't live life like that, At least
Dags almost caused an international incident when we went to Australia as a team after our freshman year, getting in a fight with some choice words with a 22-year-old player. I can't remember the team. Was it the Sharks in Sydney?
Razorbacks, West Sydney Razorbacks. We almost beat them too, top-level team. Steve
had some choice words for a player on there, and I think we had to be escorted out of the gym after that.
In a friendly, they call it friendly. Yeah. In a friendly. Yeah. All right. Wait, actually on that trip too, to piggyback off that, the first team we played, we beat them. It was Australian Institute of Sport. It's where all their best, basketball players, it's their academy or whatever. Patty Mills, starting point guard, Joe Ingles. There had to be one other guy in there. I can't remember if there was, but they were 16 or 17 at the time, and we were 21, but,
Double NBA guys, right? The Spurs and the Jazz, right?
We'll
it's on my resume.
That's exactly right. All right, so both of you guys have this coaching, this game background. For younger people listening, maybe high school. What's the best advice to get recruited to play at the next level? Josh, we'll start with you. Best advice for young players hoping to get recruited.
You just got to work. There's no shortcuts. Everybody has a highlight tape now. Everybody has a guy who's helping them get recruited. With YouTube, with video, with scouting services nowadays, there's going to be less and less Steve Dagostinos of the world, guys that are just missed by other schools. I really believe that. When I was coaching at UAlbany, easily 20 to 25 emails a day just from a kid, a parent, a coach. Oh, check out Johnny Jones's highlight, but you got to work, and they're going to find you. Going back maybe to the transfer thing, just real quick, if there ever was a kid who slipped through the cracks, now they're going to find you again, because like Dags was saying, the days of the Steve Dagostino 4 years at St. Rose, whether it's right or wrong, probably over. A kid at that level will transfer up, or a kid at an Albany level. We've seen that in the America East or in the MAC, transfer up. We had David Nichols and Joe Cremo, who went to Florida State and Villanova. So you got to work, you got to play, you're going to be seen. Recruiting the last year has been off film anyway. Division I coaches weren't allowed to go out and recruit. So there's, at the end of the day, and I say this, you got to get in the gym. You got to get in the gym. You got to work. You got to be prepared when your time comes.
So I would just preface what Josh is saying. What I tell people is you have to be good enough, and you get good enough by working hard every day. Like we have a saying that I tell to our parents and players, like if you do the right thing, good things are going to happen. You know, it might not be what you want, right? I wanted to be a Division I guy, and I ended up being a Division II guy, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But, you know, I don't worry about our players that I know are good enough. You know, even our Division I, Division II, Division III, like there's guys that are just tough, that understand how to play, are good teammates, and are skilled. And like, I don't worry about those guys, but there's a lot of people, like even the question, right? Like, What do you have to do to get recruited? Like there's something else besides being good enough that you can do. But that's how it is. There's recruiting services, there's highlights, there's, getting the right people to talk about you at the right time. At the end of the day, like, if you're not good enough, okay, you may sneak onto a roster and then you're out after a year. I'd much rather have the guy, like we had a kid a couple years ago from Niskayuna who went to Hamilton, and he ended up being on like a Sweet 16 team. They won 25 games their last 2 years. Like, I'd much rather have that guy who goes to the right level and plays really well than a guy who's chasing Division I and sits on the bench all the time and just tells everybody that he's playing Division I and is like a walk-on and is telling people he got a scholarship, right? So right. My whole thing is just be good enough, and to go off what Josh is saying, you're good enough because you put in the hard work.
Next one here, a little self-reflection for both of you. Dax, I'll start with you. Hope for the future. Like, if we talk 1 year from now in April, recording this in April 2021, if we talk in April 2022, where are you hoping Dax basketball is? And Josh, where are you hoping your career is? We'll start with Dax.
So the more you do this, the more, like, for me, it was always, get the best players in the gym and work with them. And like, for me now, I've kind of transitioned. I still want to do that, but I want to impact as many kids as possible. I think youth sports is like so messed up. I think, like, you want to get into a business, sports psychology is the business. I can't tell you the amount of college coaches that are like, the most important person on our staff is our sports psychologist, because these kids are so messed up from their youth sports playing days and the pressure that's put on them and training like a pro from when they were in like 5th grade that, these guys, I feel like I've never seen more people cry after, during, or before a basketball game, like on TV, than I have in the last 5 years. Like, when did you ever? I never saw that 15, 20 years ago, right? There's so much pressure on these kids. So like, what I want to try to do is keep impacting these kids, using basketball to obviously teach them how to work towards a goal and be accountable and be leaders and all that stuff. But I want them to be happy. And I don't think there's many people like in their lives saying like, yo, like, it's okay to play basketball just because you love it. You don't have to go to college to play. You don't have to want to be a pro. So I think if we can expand our reach to just keep impacting kids and players, then we'll be in a good place.
Josh, to you.
Just to piggyback on, I guess, what Dag said there, nothing is ever enough for people anymore in general. Everybody's comparing their happiness to others, and going through what I'm going through now, being, fired, let go, whatever the terminology you want to use. I'm still blessed. I'm still lucky. My wife and I are, have 2 beautiful kids. For me, a year from now, happiness is a coaching job where we're safe and secure like we have been for the last 10 years, which is going to come. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be a week from now. I don't know if it'll be a month from now or 4 months from now. But that's really what it's about at the end of the day. Like, I've always loved the coaching and the relationship with the kids. And like Dag said, trying to help the kids, because at the end of the day, that's why we have jobs. I spend more time with the players and talking to players' parents or something along those lines during a season than, quite frankly, I do with my own family. But just, meeting those people and developing those relationships and helping kids grow is really what it's about. And like I said, I don't know where that will lead me or where that will be, but I do believe it'll be in a good place that is good for myself and my family.
I'm rooting for both of you guys. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for both of you. I'm definitely fans of your guys' work, so continue the great work. Usually I close every Getting There with Gaz with best advice for someone who wants to do what you're doing, but you guys have given us advice throughout the entire episode, which is the hope of this podcast, so I love that. So that opens up a 5th question. Let's get a Zach Bye story. Let's get a Zach Bye story that no one's ever heard before from his playing days that you're able to share on a podcast, because we're all buddies with him. And I had honestly, I didn't even plan on asking this, but because you guys already answered the advice question, now Zach's stuck with hearing a story from one of you two. I'm not even going to tell which one has to tell it. Whoever wants to go and tell a Zach story, go right ahead.
Dax, go ahead.
Oh man, I'm trying to think of one that's like safe to put out into the public.
All right,
go ahead.
I'll tell you one. He holds the record for most dunks and warm-ups in St. Rose history.
Oh, I got a good one too. So senior night, right? And so Zach, we're playing Southern Connecticut, and Zach is went on a recruiting trip with one of Southern Connecticut's players to a different school. So he knew him. I think the kid's name was like Clyde something, right? But I think the dude's name was Clyde. And so they know each other, right? So before the game, they're dapping each other up, whatever. So Zach gets in. He's got like all Scotias at the game. Like his coach Gemate's there. Everybody's going crazy. So it's like 30 seconds left. And he tells Clyde, he's like, yo, Clyde, you got to let me go and get a dunk right now. So Zach rips through. Clyde lets him go. Zach dunks. Everybody's going crazy because everybody loves Zach. He's going down the sideline. He's like high-fiving people in the stands. You're like, what the heck? Ball goes out of bounds. He's like, Clyde, I got to get another one. They throw it deep. Zach dunks it again. Instead of running up the sideline like slapping five, he's in the stands. Like he goes up the stands at St. Rose. It's like right on the court. And I'm like, yo, Zach, like only you, like anywhere else, it'd be like a national like disaster. Like, what are we doing here? But for Zach, everyone's like, yeah, like that's awesome. Like we love him.
Oh my God, the Birdman was flying at the College of St. Rose. Oh, it's so good. I've never heard that before. I love the College of St. Rose because my wife actually was a freshman when you guys were seniors. So I started showing pictures of, do you know who this person is? Yes. Do I know who this person is? Yes. I had a little baby onesie of a hoodie I was going to show you guys that the recruiting has already started for my son to go to the College of St. Rose.
There you go.
But it's upstairs with all the other changed clothes that have become a mess over the last few days. So thank you guys so much for doing this. I don't think I missed anything. Is there anything you guys want to close with? A big story, anything else? If not, I'll let you guys enjoy some basketball for the rest of the night.
I'm all good. This was fun. I appreciate you having us on, and good luck in your new venture. This is pretty cool.
Thank you. You know what? Actually, shout out your guys' social medias. If someone wants to be part of Dags Basketball, if someone's looking for Coach Pelletier, just shoot out your socials, and then we'll let you go.
So for me on Twitter, it's at Steve Dags, and then on Instagram and Facebook, you can just find us at Dags Basketball.
Mine is for both is at Coach J, and then my last name Pelletier. I'm sure you could Google that if you don't know how to spell it. And guys, thanks for having us on. This is awesome, and I can only see where this thing is going for you. It's gonna be years of great stories, and the next time you want to have us on, maybe for more like a PG-13 or an R-rated St. Rose story version. I know where all the skeletons are buried with
no skeletons, dude. Come on, man. Hey, my wife already said, like, she was like, when I told her, I'm like, yeah, Josh and I are going on with Gaz. She's like, I'm not playing with Josh tonight. So make sure that he's not saying anything.
One day we'll do the after dark version of this podcast. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time.